Hello, I'm Franny, and I don't know about you, but I just love reading. Ever since I was little, I've always had my nose in a book. So it's no surprise, really, that English literature is my favorite class. And I'm planning on majoring in literature in college. None of my friends are really into literature, so sometimes it can get a bit lonely, as I feel like the only one who really cares about books. And I just wish I had someone I could share this passion with, other than our teacher, Miss Carlisle. She just went on maternity leave, so other than the odd email, we probably won't keep in touch much. On the first day of the new term, I was so nervous about who our new teacher would be. I was praying that it wouldn't be Mr. Smith, as he is so strict, and he always picks the worst books for his classes to read. As I walked into the class, I noticed our new teacher. Well, it looked like it was my lucky day. He was definitely the same age as my dad, but he looked cool and slightly unkempt, with a mop of messy hair and a lot of stubble. As I took my seat, he smiled at me, and if I wasn't mistaken, his gaze kind of lingered. I blushed and pulled my books out of my bag. He introduced himself as Mr. Webbs, and then we all had to introduce ourselves too, and mention our top 3 favorite writers. I couldn't believe it when he said his favorites were exactly the same as mine. He complimented me on my good taste and said he would bring some books in for me that he thought might be to my liking. I left the class feeling like I was floating. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about him. After school, I saw him getting into his car, and he waved to me and said, "See you tomorrow, Franny." I cycled home with my heart racing, and that night, I thought about him nonstop. I couldn't wait for our next class together. The next day, when I reached his class, there were a pile of books on my desk. He'd slipped a note inside saying, "I hope you enjoy them as much as I did." And then, he'd even added a smiley face. Or was it a winky face? I devoured them. And when I'd finished them, I also slipped a note inside, saying, "Thank you so much." I thought about adding a heart, but then decided not to. We kept going in this way for the next month. He always left me a note inside, and in some, he'd even written little messages on the pages giving his opinion. At first, I thought he was doing this because he wanted to encourage me and help broaden my knowledge of the great writers. But then I started to think, maybe he liked me as more than just his student. One lunch, I caught him staring at me through the dining hall doors. He must have been staring at me for like 5 minutes straight. I wanted to get to know him more before Miss Carlisle came back. It was almost the last day of the term, and Mr. Webbs wasn't sure he'd still be subbing for her next term. My heart sank at the thought of not being able to see him every day. I decided I needed to do something. The next day was the very last day of term. So, I put on my brave face and made my way to his office before class that day. I knocked on his door, and as I entered, I noticed he looked a bit sad. He must have been feeling upset that it was his last day with me too. He asked me to take a seat, and as I did so, I spotted a framed picture on his desk of a young girl. She looked similar to me. This was unbelievable. He saw me looking at it, and I asked who she was. He then went on to explain that it was his daughter, who had sadly passed away from cancer 2 years ago. He said they'd moved to the city to try and start afresh and let go of the past couple of years of sadness. He then looked at me with tears in his eyes and said I remind him a lot of his daughter, and that she had also loved literature as much as I do, and that it had made him happy to be able to share his favorite books with me, as he would have loved to have done that with his daughter. I didn't really know what to say back to him. I felt so stupid. Here I was, about to declare my love to a man that had lost his daughter, and I had gotten all the signals wrong. He apparently didn't want me to be his lover. I told him, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And then I said I needed to go or I'd be late for class. He looked a bit confused and asked why I'd come to see him. I just said it was some questions about the exam and that I'd just ask him in class. I quickly left, feeling humiliated. What had I been thinking? Clearly, I'd been reading too many romance novels recently. I hurried off to class and tried to forget all about it. What did you think of this story? Please feel free to share your comments and stories in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.